Well, we've got Neontenic here, a synthwave artist from Milan. I believe you're from Milan, is that correct?
Yes, approximately yes.
Great, cool,
Milano. All right.
Milano, yeah.
I've been to Milan, but I haven't spent any time there. I've been to Milan, but then I've been going always somewhere else, like Verona or something like that, or whatever. But yeah.
Well then, Neontenic, first off, thanks for coming by to chat with us.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure for me.
Awesome, man. Talk to us a little bit about your project, dude. How did it come about? How did you come up with the idea of having this project by the name of Neontenic?
Well, last year I started to listen to a lot of synthwave music, and I really enjoyed the imaginary of synthwave. There was a lot of pics that I was starting to collect, so I decided to open an Instagram profile with these pics, and I really didn't imagine that this profile could go so fine. So I'm really happy about this because I have not the provision about this. So I started to create music too, and I decided to take this name, Neontenic, and it was so natural for me to assume this identity.
All right, all right.
Yeah. So I was just gonna ask, what are you inspired by? Like, how did you get into the whole synthwave genre?
Well, everything started a couple of years ago because I discovered the first album from Gunship, and it was like a revelation for me because I always loved the 80s music, and so I suddenly realized that there was a really huge scene about this music, and I made some 80s tracks in the past. For example, I make the soundtrack for a music app for iPhones, and it was a 80s app. It was a game, a really simple game. Unfortunately, it's not on the App Store because it was not updated, but I create maybe I didn't know that I was made in synthwave, but I did a 80s soundtrack for this app. So when I discovered that there was a huge scene about this name synthwave, I suddenly felt like I'm at home.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice answer, man. Yeah.
I think that's interesting as well because a lot of synthwave artists don't necessarily set out to be a synthwave artist. They synthwave finds them. So, what kind of music, what synthwave artists do you listen to?
I really enjoy the music from, for example, Wave Shaper, and for example from Drive Bishop because he released last week's new album, and I really enjoyed it. And for example, as I said, I really enjoy Gunship music.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've listened to Gunship a while back since 2015, and I think he's improved a lot when it comes to the songwriting process. And as of now, I think my favorite song would have to be the Video Game Champion. I mean, just listening to it, it's very, it's like bringing you back to to your childhood where you enjoyed the most of what you've done as a kid, and that's like I guess my way of viewing that particular song. And I got to give them props for what they do.
Yeah, but that was it's not one of my favorite track because I like the first album from Gunship because the second one is pretty dark, and I really love some sounds from this album, but I think that the real synthwave album from Gunship is the first one. From the second one, I really love the The title track, it's a Dark Day. It's the second track, and but I still love the first one.
Yeah, I think Tim Capello is in that song, right? Dark All Day, or was it another song?
I think it's another song. Sincerely, I don't remember it now.
Talking of Tim Capello, then, are there any actual original '80s artists that you would consider inspirations outside of the synthwave genre? The actual old school '80s musicians.
Yeah, I think that, for example, Depeche Mode are really inspiring for me. And when I was younger, I really loved their albums, and I saw them live 3 times here in Italy. And I think that they are the most representative 80s band from my tastes. And I obviously I have to say that John Carpenter, for example, is another inspiration for me. And I really loved Gary Newman, for example. When I started to making electronic music, Gary Newman was probably one of my first inspiration. And when I bought my first synthesizers almost 15 years ago, one of the first track I tried to play on a synthesizer was "Cars" by Gary Newman.
Nice,
I
nice,
really
nice.
have
Yeah, it's a great
good
track.
memories about this because he was one of pioneer of the electronic music and for my inspiration for electronic music.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice answer, man. Yeah.
If you could change anything about the industry, what would you change?
Well, it's a hard question because I started to make synthwave music only some months ago, but I think that synthwave scene is a really good scene, and there are lots of guys that try to give a voice to other musicians. For example, some YouTube channels or some websites who make reviews from the album. The only problem probably is that there are not so many big channels. There are a lot of small realities, really a lot of small realities, and it's not easy for each reality to emerge, to give a voice to all these musicians. But I think that it's a problem for other music genres. So I think that you only need to make a big track and to spend all the day, all the days, all the weeks to try to make your music to be listened to more people. And probably it's not the funniest part to be a musician, but nowadays it's extremely necessary. And I think that nowadays a musician spend 20-30% of the time making music and the other time to try to make your music listen but by more people. Maybe it's not so funny often, but it's part of the game. So let's play this game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You have to do everything yourself nowadays. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially within this type of music community, New Retrowave is probably the only label I could think of, which is probably the top dog of the industry, technically speaking here. But, nowadays, with the technology we have, I mean, because I've been doing this for several years, and I've realized how much it's grown. And all these other artists that we've looked up to have changed drastically. And I feel like with what we have, we're able to technically do everything ourselves compared to record labels. Although, when you think about it, in the end of the day, it really comes down to how much effort you put into it, like you said earlier. And truthfully, the way I see it, it's anybody's ball, anybody's game. Really, anybody can make it happen. I think it's really about how much you want it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really amazing because if you think only 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this was not so easy to create, it's what not so easy to reach some results as nowadays. But there is another side of this fact because so every young boy can buy a laptop and starting to can start to make music and probably it's not so good for music quality and this create tons of music project and not so I can say a big part of them is not so a great quality project, but there is only a way to make something with more quality. It's to starting studying electronic music. It's not so easy. You can buy a software. You can starting make music with this software, but the music quality, the sounds quality is really recognizable for me, for example, because I have a disease. I'm a synthesizer collector, so I enveloped my ear to recognize when a sound is a fake sound and when a sound is from a real analog synthesizer. So it's not a golden rule to make a good music, obviously, but if you think to make music with only a software and you started to make music 2 weeks ago, it's not so easy to make a great track. You need a lot of time to study other synthwave musicians, for example, all the music in itself. So I think that to give an opportunity to everyone is a great thing, but maybe it's the process is now too much easy, and the quality of the music can go lower for this reason. But I'm really happy about this opportunity that everyone can take.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's as when you first start. I think that's great. You know, you have your computer, you have a simple setup, and you can make music. As you grow, you learn. You learn that real analog synthesizers, analog equipment can give you the edge. But the main thing is everyone can make music. So that's the great thing.
Yes, the most important thing is to have fun first of all, and second to make if you can good music. But the most important thing is to have fun. So it's not important how good you are. If you having fun to make music, you already reached a great goal for me. For me, it's only a fun thing to make music. I really enjoy making music. It could be never a work for me. It's only a pleasure.
Sure. I think for me, making music is a therapy. It resets my mind. If I'm feeling sad, I make music. If I'm feeling happy, I make music. But it rebalances me.
It's like our getaway in a way.
Yeah, sure. Well, so we've got another question, haven't we? Where's the?
Oh, I got you.
You are so pixelated, guys.
These two always look like that. It's like I'm sure I look fine. It's like
he's the next Poseidon, by the way. The next. Just kidding.
I've just got to mention your song, "The Factory," is excellent song, and I don't know. I think Johnny and me both love that one, don't we?
That's actually by far my favorite track as well. I mean, I have that in my playlist as well on Spotify. Yeah. Yeah,
it's a cool track, man. And that is one of you were saying to us the other day that's one of your later tracks you've worked on. So if this is a direction you're going in, this is one you've just worked on. I mean, you're obviously heading in the right direction.
When sincerely, I don't have a direction when I create music. I started to play some sounds on synthesizer, and for example, the factory was born from the sequence of the beginning sequence, and I created this sequence with that synthesizer OB6. It's the one of the topper synthesizer, and I'm really pretentious about myself. So most of the things I do when I do music, I'm not so satisfied about them. But when I started making the factory notes, sequences, sounds, I realized that these sounds could be good. So it was one of the first track I composed for my forthcoming album, and it's really rare that happened, but it was a magic moment. So for other tracks, there is not a golden rule for me, but I started to create drums, for example, and the bass line. So usually I start from them.
Speaking of synthesizers, do you have any specific synthesizer that you use the most, that you like?
Yes, for example, for most of my tracks, I use the synthesizer I told you before. It's OB6, is an analogous polyphonic synthesizer from a collaboration from Dave Smith and Tom Bomberheim. These are two epic figures of the history of synthesizer. And another synthesizer that I use the most is Prophet 6, is another polyphonic synthesizer always from Dave Smith. And for bass line, my favorite one is Moog Voyager, is a classic one. It's a classic one. But I think that these three synthesizers are one of the better synthesizers that we can use. Oh,
Well, we got something to show you.
it's a polyevolver, right?
Polyevolver, yeah. This is my one, yeah. Probably my favourite synthesizer.
I was really close to buy it some years ago.
Yeah, sure. They stopped making it now, haven't they? You can't buy them anymore.
It's a really good one. I really love to have that one in my setup too.
Yeah. Dave Smith is a legend. I agree. Very good synthesizer maker. You can't really go wrong with any of his synthesizers. Thanks very much for talking to us, Neontenic. It's great talking to you, and I'm hoping when your album's out, we can talk again.
Follow Neontenic Instagram.
Cool, man.
Thank you, guys. I really enjoyed our talking and hope to hear you soon. Thank you for having me, and it was a pleasure.
Cheers, man.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
man.